Good morning, everybody. Today is Sunday, April 18th, 2021, and you are watching or listening to another edition of Forward Maryland. I'm Bill Woodcock.
And I'm Jason Booms.
And Jason, today I am proudly wearing my Boston Celtics long sleeve shirt, winners of 6 in a row, including a huge road win against the hated Lakers and a stunning home win versus the Golden State Warriors last night. Where are you these days in the world of basketball?
I don't watch much pro ball anymore. Obviously, huge Pistons fan, always will be, because that's how you played the game. So I have to ask, what got you, what got you into the Celtics?
It was the 1976 NBA Finals, the Celtics versus the Phoenix Suns, a 4 overtime game in Phoenix in June. And as a 9-year-old, I said, whoever wins this game is going to be my favorite team.
Wow.
And so that became Boston. And so I had no idea that the Celtics had this history of success and had won so many championships. Plus, in the pre-Irsay shite move that happened in Baltimore sports, Abe Pollin had 2 years prior moved the Baltimore Bullets to the gleaming new cavernous Capitol Center, which has since been torn down and replaced by shopping malls and apartments, while the decrepit Baltimore Arena still sits as Baltimore's sports arena.
Well, maybe it could be used again if there's a WNBA team that pops up in Baltimore.
Since there's the Mystics, I don't see how that's happening. We didn't even get the G League here. We have the Capital City Go-Go.
I'm less familiar with the storied history of the Capital City Go-Go. You have to tell me.
Well, it's quite brief, but our guest 2 shows ago, Bill Santos, is quite the go-go historian, so he should let you know.
Oh, awesome.
So we are honored today to go back to our series on the 1st Congressional District. We're not talking to a candidate today, but we're talking to Mary Turos, who is the founder of the Decency For the 1st District PAC, and you can reach them at www.d4d1.org. So very simple, d4d1.org. And Mary has graciously agreed to come on our show, and I'm just going to tell you the similarity in the backgrounds is coincidental. She is not sitting right next to me. Mary, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And so tell us about, if you wish, a little bit about who you are, but certainly what the Decency for D1 PAC is and what your goals are.
So just a little bit about how we got this all started. So after the election of 2016, I really wanted, just for myself, to understand the mindset of people and why they voted the way they did, right? So I spent a lot of time talking with people from all political stripes. I talked with people who voted for Trump, people who voted for other candidates, and I was really just trying to understand the mindset, so to ease my mind. And as I was doing this, I learned a lot of people, as a byproduct, I learned a lot of public opinion about the congressional representative for Maryland District One, Andy Harris. And I'm a Harford County resident. I've lived here for 16 years, was never really politically involved or politically active. But the more and more I learned about Congressman Harris's votes and his voting record, the more and more troubled I became. And as I was talking with voters all across the state, but primarily in my own district, District 1, I found that there was basically the common attitude that nobody really liked Andy Harris. Even the people who voted for him can't stand him. So, doing deeper dives, we want better people. So as the circumstances of life happened, I kind of came across a bunch of like-minded people who were from different political parties, affiliations, and we all wanted the same thing. We wanted better representation in Congress. So we kind of just sat around the fire pit pre-pandemic, right? Sat around the fire pit and kind of came up with ideas and decided that why not us? You know, instead of just complaining all the time about this, why don't we try to make a difference? And so what we decided to do was form a political action committee. None of us really knew anything about this. None of us have political backgrounds or, you know, are wildly connected to anybody, but we decided to start this political action committee where we would, regardless of party affiliation, try to find somebody to replace this awful representative of ours. And it's growing. So the party is the PAC is nonpartisan. We are all volunteers. In fact, my husband and I put the seed money together to just get the website going and things like that. We don't take any money. We just want to get the message out there. And what we found was that when we were talking to people in District 1, people who were voting were not aware of Andy Harris's voting record and how they were really voting against their own interests. So that led us to our core belief that we just need to educate voters about the issues and then let them make their own mind up. If he gets voted in again, that's democracy, right? But people should have the option to know who else is out there. So we welcome anybody to come onto our virtual town halls and talk about their policies, what they want to do. We have people working with us, like I said, from all political backgrounds. We are not one party or another. We're not favoring one party or another. We just want to get the information out there. So that's really what our PAC is about. And just to give you a little bit about how I got involved with the Andy Harris issues in particular. So when Trump was elected and the Affordable Health Care Act was under, looked like it was going to get axed, I actually made an appointment with Andy Harris, which is very difficult to do. You know, you have to get vetted. You have to show that you're really one of his constituents. Well, he doesn't really do town halls, or the ones that he does. If you're selected randomly to give a question, it's all ahead of time so he can prepare his canned response. And he was doing virtual town halls on a very limited basis, even before the pandemic. But anyway, so I went to his office in Bel Air, did not meet with him, of course, but met with his staffers to talk about options for the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, that he wanted to gut. And what I found very interesting is that the women who worked for him, he had 2 workers there the day I was there, both got their health care under the Affordable Care Act. And so I was incredulous when I found that out. And I asked the staffer who was meeting with us, so you're working for the guy who's actively trying to get rid of your health insurance. And she looked down and she shook her head and she's like, yeah. And that spoke volumes to me, that people are so desperate. They know that there are better options out there, but they don't know how to get it done. Right. So that's kind of where I fell into all of this.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that, Mary, and I know from your website that you're a former Republican turned independent, and so for sure this is a initiative that is across the political spectrum. And thank you for sharing that story about his 2 staffers. I mean, I know we're only a very short time into this cycle, but how would you characterize the reception your efforts have received so far?
Everybody wants him out. Everybody, Republicans, independents, Democrats, of course, everybody wants him out. He has done nothing to help the people he's supposed to be representing. He's voted no on everything. And, he likes to do the photo ops. He likes to talk the good game of saying that he's pro-police, pro-first responders, but then he votes no on anything that can help them. You know, the 9/11 first responders bill, he voted no against. He didn't even vote for Officer Goodman and when the Capitol was attacked, right, by insurgents.
Mhm.
He voted no to give Officer Goodman the Congressional Gold Medal. How ridiculous is that? How is that, even nominated?
I think one of about what, a single digit number of Republicans
Right. I
in the
think it's
entire
12 or
House who
13.
voted against. It may have been
Yeah, it's just
low
so,
tens, but extremely small.
yeah. So, and you look at his war chests and where he's getting his funding, he's still got almost $1 million in his war chest. And very little of that money comes from regular people. It's a lot of outside groups and businesses. So, we know we're up against, we know this is a David versus Goliath kind of situation, but I'm here to say we're committed to seeing somebody else represent District 1.
So one more question, then I'll hand it over to Jason. I know the primary in Maryland is, I believe, June of next year. And of course, the general election is in November. And I know you're doing town halls with different candidates for the first district.
Right.
What do you see the PAC doing between now and June and then November?
So again, we have opened it up. We've invited anybody who's declared running for Congressional District 1. We have invited them to come on to our virtual town hall meeting. So far, we've met with Mia Mason and Dave Harden. On May 11th, we have Heather Meisier, and in June 16th, we have Jennifer Pingley. And there are more coming along. There are also some higher level up, some state representatives, some state senators, our congressmen, other congressional districts who are doing things to help us move along, because we all know that in order to get things done, we need to talk to each other, right? So we're trying to shoot for something every month. We're lining things up. We have other things in the works. We're trying to just get schedules settled, right? And so if anybody wants to find out more about what we're offering, you can certainly visit our website, d4d1.org, Decency for District 1, right? But we also need to just get the information out. So any support that we can get to have billboards or flyers, just to get the information out about what's at stake. I think we can all agree that we need our farmers. We need a healthy Chesapeake Bay. We need effective immigration reform, right? We need ways to get us talking to each other instead of going in different directions and getting nothing done. So we all love our state. We all love Maryland. So let's get it done.
Thank you, Jason.
Yeah. Well, it's great you have a process where you're really, where you're talking to people, where you're talking to potential candidates, because obviously you can't beat someone with no one. So it's good you're having those conversations. Are you putting any time or resources into the redistricting part of things? Because obviously that needs to take place first. And if he can get drawn into a much tougher district, that could take care of a significant chunk of his war chest.
Mm-hmm. So officially, by the bylaws of the way we are set up, so we can't endorse any particular candidate. Obviously, we can just get the information out there. And really, the mission of our PAC is just to get rid of Andy Harris. So that's just our main focus. We're just here to educate voters, get them to a position where they can feel good enough about what the issues are and make their decision there. So we're really not able right now to focus on anything other than that. Just if you had logistics.
Oh, completely understand. Just looking through his resume, since he was elected to Congress. I mean, there's obviously so many different troubling things you can point into. Quite frankly, I'm a little bit surprised he's managed to avoid arrest at this point, but there you have it. But between buddying up to Hungarian autocrats, which is one reason why Hungary should no longer be in NATO under the current government, between his wife on the payroll, between calling Maya Angelou a communist sympathizer who spoke at Bill Clinton's first inauguration, supportive of QAnon, supportive of an alleged pedophile in Roy Moore, apparently pro-genocide because he fails to recognize the Armenian genocide. I mean, the guy's a scumbag, as Proust said, on multiple levels. Yeah. I mean, what is it that you think is really going to most capture the attention of voters in the first, in terms of is there one piece of information you think might flip a switch for some people?
So I think a lot of people that I've talked with were very troubled by the events of January 6th and his response to that. The police and the first responders, District 1 is a very strange district. It goes all up the Eastern Shore. I'm all the way in Harford County. I'm in North Harford County. And so, the impact, it's all about messaging, right? Because if you take the D and the R out of the conversation with people, we all come to agreement. We all want a healthy Chesapeake Bay. We all want farmers to do well and not get eclipsed by some of these programs that are cutting out the small farmers, right? People everywhere want to make a living. They want to live in peace. And they're really not as radical as people think they are. So the merging of the minds is there. I think what has to happen is just, again, educating people on the issues. This is what you're saying you want, voter. And this is what your representative is voting for, which is in direct opposition. And doing that without judgment or arrogance, right? Because I think sometimes, especially if you're following a lot of the political issues, you think everybody is following it at the same level, right? But what I'm finding is that people are not. People are just trying to make a living, right? So they don't have time to follow all this. But the one hot button, other than the insurgency on January 6th, is just the way the disregard for how he's handling the COVID pandemic, and then his reaction to first responders, not voting to have first responders taken care of is shameful. And how you can turn around and then say you're pro, first responders when you're doing nothing to help those people from the 9/11 fallout. And then, to do these photo ops, doing an injection here and there of COVID vaccinations, and then you're undercutting and gutting everything that can keep our population healthy. Everything rests on a healthy population, our economy, our national security, everything. So, he may talk a good game and do the photo ops, and that's what people see. But when you really see what his voting record is, it's horrifying. And good people need to understand that. And I just don't think they have the time to give it the attention it warrants. So we're trying to correct that.
I mean, it is very challenging. As you pointed out, people are very time pressed. Maybe they're not politically engaged and they only pay attention, as many people do. They don't pay attention until the final weeks of the campaign before making decisions. But it's really about finding the right messaging that does the job. And yeah, I do think when you're dealing with someone who is a physician, who nonetheless fails to recognize that a sick Chesapeake leads to sick voters, and is willing to embrace all kinds of non-science oriented information, such as his support for QAnon. It would seem that eventually some people would say, there's a bit of a disconnect between what we think we're getting with Andy Harris and what we're actually getting with him, because even by the parameters of how the Republican caucus is going these days, he is definitely an outlier. Very, very much radicalized and very extreme. So I'm hoping that people will get the word that he's a problem for the first district, and he's not really working for that.
Right. Well, fear is very primal, right? So when your messaging is all about fear, that gets a quick reaction.
Mhm.
So and that overrides any rational thinking. So if we can just talk to the people of the district, like I said, get the information out there. You know, everybody, I have not met really any people who like his messaging, but they don't know what other options are out there. So they kind of, if it's this or that, and they're worried about socialism or whatever, right? They're gonna go with what is a known bad guy versus an unknown future, because again, it's fear. It's all fear driven. So pit us against each other and get nothing done. And so that's what the beauty of the PAC is, because we welcome anybody. We want to have this conversation. We know that the only way through this is if we talk to each other and come to some common sense of reality. We all look forward to the day where we can debate issues and policies rather than basic humanity and decency, right? So like I said, we're committed. We know we have a long road ahead of us, but you have to start somewhere.
Absolutely. Right? Absolutely. Bill, back to you.
Sure. I'll pick up, Mary, on Jason's thread about redistricting, because on Heather, it was actually on Heather Mazier's site, I think late week before last, I saw a map. I'm not sure if it was a draft or if it was just something created by somebody with time and inclination, that not only created much more contiguous and community preserving districts as we currently have in Maryland, but that also maintained Democratic voting majorities, at least if you look at how they would have voted on the presidential level in 2020, in all 8 districts, and which turned the first district from, I believe, a 15% plus Trump to a 10% plus Biden. And that district, what I noticed most about that whatever it was, proposal, dream, what have you, was that it took Harris out of Carroll and northern Baltimore County, and then moved his district along the I-97 corridor and I-30 and Route 32 corridor, and then taking up a large part of Columbia and a good portion of Howard County. I don't think there's anything redeemable about this man, to the points that Jason made earlier. But would at least a more even district at least have the chance of holding him more accountable? I mean, given all the things that we've talked about the difficulty of seeing things, and I'm sorry for the run on, but, and maybe this is a separate question, but I got a phone call recently from his office for a town hall, and the town hall was back in November, December. It was about vaccinations for COVID. Well, I mean, I'm one of that, part of the 1% of geeks, of political geeks, who look at these things, and he's been against vaccinations,
Right.
And he was certainly against funding them. But yet
Right.
he's going to host a town hall and say, here's how you all can get your vaccines. So, I mean, do you think that maybe a more, tuned in electorate could be helpful in your work?
Absolutely. I really do. I think the education piece, getting the information in front of people repeatedly, right? Because people have short attention spans, right? They have a lot on their minds. They have to keep moving. But so if they're looking at his Instagram or whatever, and they see him giving a vaccination, it gives a very different feel than if you really know how he voted, right? So, I don't know how the whole redistricting thing is going to work, and I haven't given a whole lot of my mental energy to that, just because I only have so much bandwidth, and I'm just working with the constraints of what I know. If it gets redistricted, we'll pivot and, we'll move, but we're working within the constraints of what we have now with the information we have now. And that's all we can really do.
So we have about 5-10 minutes left, but I did want to ask one more question because, of course, where you hear the word PAC, that of course stirs up another wave of emotions and bucket
Sure.
of sentiments amongst
Yeah.
the electorate. So perhaps you could help describe, who are you accepting money from? Are you looking at corporations, lobbies, of course, individuals? What it sounds like you're basing this in a grassroots effort. Tell us what you'll accept and from
Well,
whom.
honestly, again, because we're nonpartisan, we're not putting our money behind, and we're not set up to endorse a candidate, right? Our PAC is set up to get the information out there, right? So that's why we welcome anybody. If anybody wants to come on and they're running and they want to be part of the town hall, great. So if we could, I'm not going to lie, if we could get, because we're up against a lot. He had, I think when I last looked, it was $1.5 million in his war chest. And, we have not that, we don't have that, I can tell you that. But so the messaging, whoever has the most money, unfortunately, that's the reality, gets the messaging. So he's still got almost $1 million left to spend. And I don't know what any of the other candidates have, but really we're up against a lot just getting the information out. So if there were groups that wanted to help us get the information about his voting record, that's going to help any of the candidates that are running against him, right? So, and a billboard costs money, flyers cost money, but none of the members in our group are taking any money from this. It's all volunteer, and everything is recorded, transparent. We file with the FEC. We are not, believe it, we are not in this for the money of any of that. And we're not looking to influence any particular candidate other than who's ever against Andy Harris, right? So if somebody's messaging, they come to us and they have a message, we're going to share it. We're not filtering it. We're not censoring it. We just want the information out there so that the voters can make their own minds up.
Jason, back to you.
I do have one more question. I don't want to get too technical on some of these issues, but just thinking about some members of Congress who strike me as being in some ways similar to Andy Harris. So, Paul Gosar and his family relations, and Lori Bullard in Colorado. You've got some more, Marjorie, what's her name down
Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Sometimes I forget names on purpose.
Yeah, probably better that way.
So you've got these extremist figures in their districts. Are there any best practices to be drawn, or in terms of what other folks, maybe they're doing similar kinds of work in those districts? Are there other lessons learned you can pull from other examples of how best to remove a very problematic member of Congress?
I wish I knew, because I'd be implementing it. Like I said, we're all newbies at this. We're not, none of us who are involved in this effort come from any kind of political background. We're just regular people who care about representation, right? And in fact, we're actually looking for some board members. So if any of your viewers out there in District 1 want to help us, we would love to have the help and more voices, and because we're just making it up as we go, so to speak, but we're gaining traction, which is exciting. And there are a lot of people who want to be involved, but because of one reason or another can't, either because of their job or their fear of retaliation or whatever it is. But there are a lot of people who are behind, want to help us behind the scenes. So that to me is encouraging. I don't know a formula. If we can get rid of Andy Harris, maybe we create the formula and we can get rid of the merger, the people who are not helpful to a democracy. I don't have to agree with them politically, but we need to have some sense of reality, shared reality, in order to make policy. Again, that's not based on, arguments over humanity and decency. And that's why we call ourselves Decency for District One, because that's what we want. Republican, Democrat, Independent. We want the best person for the job. And the only way we get that is by sharing information with voters and educating the electorate.
And it does seem as though after so many years of just this rancor, for there to be a true grassroots movement, quite frankly, it's very refreshing to see something that's educational focused as opposed to being dedicated to ripping apart other candidates. So hopefully this is a time where the movement meets the moment. You could have great success.
I hope so.
Bill, back to you.
Hey, so just wrapping up, again, the web address for the PAC is www.d4d1.org, number 4, number 1. We're here with Chair Mary Turos. We're just about ready to wrap up. Mary, any last words or anything you want to share with the people of the first district and everywhere?
We can get somebody better than Andy Harris. We just have to stay focused and committed. And we can do this. Maryland Congressional District 1 deserves much better than this guy.
Amen to that. And in fact, the entire state does. The guy's a turd. What can I say? And that's putting it nicely. So thank you, Mary. And we're looking forward to following your exploits and activities with great interest. And I hope you'll consider being on the show again.
Absolutely.
Terrific.
Thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure. Jason, any words as we wrap up?
None other than it's a good day to go outside and find a way to remove Andy Harris from Congress.
Yay.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right, let's do it.
So with those inspiring words, we sign off. My name is Bill Woodcock. You have been watching and listening to Forward Maryland. Have a great day, everybody. Take care.
Take care.